Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of the Kinship vlog. My name is Kit, and my wife Jasmine and I are starting a business called Kinship. And I wanted to take a minute today to talk about why it is we're doing this and what it is exactly. So, society has some very outdated assumptions about relationships, attachment, behaviors, emotions, connection. The list kind of goes on and on. But we know, Jasmine and I know from our own work on our relationship that there's just so much information and research and tools out there that can help you. But the problem is that most people don't know that this exists. Or if they do know it exists, it is inaccessible to them. They don't have the means, the resources, the time to get this help. And so Kinship is here to change that. We aim to unlock and spread information about relationships so that everyone can be their best self with the person who matters the most to them. So before I jump in too deep into things, I want to take a step back and talk about myself, particularly where I was about 10 years ago, which was coming out of a not so great long-term relationship, and what kind of person I was really, which was, if I could describe it honestly and accurately now, I would say I was very not available emotionally. And the reason for that is manifold, but I had a lot of trauma from childhood, and as a result, I had some pretty high defenses, particularly around what I'm going to call addictive autoregulation tendencies, which is a fancy way of saying that I liked to come home after a day at the office and play video games. That was my drug of choice. Some people drink, some people do drugs, some people gamble, some people watch Netflix, some people eat. I played video games. That was my way of numbing out to the world, and that's how I sort of self-medicated and kept myself feeling good. In addition to that, I had very little self-awareness, so my state of being, my emotions, I always considered myself just fine, no matter what. If I had a bad day, a stressful day, happy day, whatever, I would come home and I would say, I'm fine. And so I would never admit to someone else, but worse yet, I would never acknowledge to myself that things could affect me. And that, combined with my tendency to numb out by playing video games and just being unavailable emotionally, made me the dynamite package. What a catch, right? That's where I was 10 years ago. And a lot has changed in that 10 years. So step 1, find a really awesome woman who happens to be a couples therapist and then marry her. Failing to do that, we're hopefully at Kinship going to have other opportunities for you to learn the same stuff that I've learned, transformations that I've gotten to undertake. I met my wife, we got married, we've had kids, we've done therapy, we're doing therapy, and I think the biggest thing I would impart here before I just jump into some other stuff is I always thought of therapy as this sort of one-off. It was something on your to-do list that you checked off. You took your antibiotics and you're all better. But in actuality, it's much more close to habit-forming, habit-building type of activity, such as lifting weights, exercise. If I lifted weights once a year, I would not have a lot of muscle mass. I would not be very strong, not gain strength. It's something that you do routinely and practice at and work hard at. And the hard work and the consistency adds up to a long-term massive benefit. And that's what we've had the luxury of doing at therapy. And that is kind of what we're aiming to be able to do to package up with Kinship, is giving couples a way of practicing the things they need to practice in order to upkeep their relationship and their emotional mental health with their partners. Why live streaming? In essence, I would like to share the experience, putting together a business, a livelihood from the ground up. And I think transparency is, for the most part, lacking in the world and in the world of business these days. I've worked for enough companies that have made a lot of wrong decisions for the wrong reasons and failed in multitudes of different ways. And I don't like it. And I don't want to work at or for those kinds of companies anymore. So I want to build a business that does it the right way. And I think being open and transparent about it and streaming the process is a way to set the right example. It's a way to put my mission and my principles first and show that it can be done. And if it can be done over a live stream, then it can become a proven model of success. And if that's the case and that can change the world for better, then I will have accomplished something really meaningful. So how are we going to make kinship a reality? Well, if our goal is to unlock and spread information about relationships, step one is what I'm going to call dog fooding, which is, the stuff that we make, the software, the relationship principles. Jasmine and I are going to use that, and we're already using it in our own lives and our own relationships, right? Like, this is the example we're setting. We are walking the experience and living the transformation ourselves. One, so that we can be believers, and two, so that we can speak with an authenticity that resonates. One point I want to touch on is that there's an observable lag time between what the scientific community believes to be the truth. A couple of examples of this. One notable one is cigarettes. Cigarette smoking was first noted to be correlated with cancer or negative health outcomes as early as the 1930s. It took 30 years, 25, 30 years after that before society at large started to kind of wise up to the fact that cigarettes were bad for you. And, still 20, 30 years after that before it kind of became mainstream where like cigarettes are now defunct from most public places. And that's a lifetime's worth of lag time between when a discovery was made that could have major impact on your life to when just in general society had caught up to it. The thing here about relationships is we're living in that same type of lag in our knowledge and understanding of relationships. And so we've learned and we've experienced lots of things about relationships. I'll give you a couple of examples. One is that we're not really taught that relationships are hard work. Longitudinal studies of relationships that go across decades show that even the best, the highest end of the curve, the happiest, most thriving, best couples still argue 20% of the time. So 1 out of every 5 things they're still going to have disagreements on. They're not going to see eye to eye. They're going to fight about it. And that doesn't make sense with our worldview of like, well, if you're a happy couple, you just get along. You don't fight. But the trick is that what these top echelon of people, relationships can do that regular or couples that fail can't is repair. And so we're not taught that the biggest and most important thing to do is how do you come back together and repair a disconnection, right? That's a major, major thing to like comprehend. And then to furthermore to like, how do you do that? How do you practice it? How do you get good at that? If you're not natural at it, like where are your pitfalls? What do you look for, right? Another thing is that attachment styles, right? What are attachment styles, even if you don't know what those are, right? This is kind of something that you learn from an infant to a young adult from your family of origin. How do you attach to the people that are important to you in your life? And there's been a lot of research and a lot of science and a lot of studies. This is known. There are known quantities here about different styles of attachment and their impacts on your behavior as an adult. In other words, we carry these things we call default settings, these biases, unconsciously with us into adulthood that we've learned, that we've ingrained in us from childhood. And they have major impacts on our interactions with the people in our lives, specifically our partners. And if we're not aware of that, which most of us are not, I never was, then this can have major consequences on the types of things that we get triggered over, the types of arguments we have, the spirals that we dance in with each other and our partners, and all the while oblivious to why this is happening. But now we have this information where you can just like, okay, I can see it now. I can't unsee it. That changes my relationship and how I handle myself and the outcomes for my relationship. And I'm just kind of getting rolling here, but these are the things that Kinship aims to bring to light, spread out there that you would never be able to like sort of get unless you were really looking for it. Maybe you pay a lot of money to go to a really good therapist. or otherwise you just wouldn't have this information. Kinship's going to make that available. It's going to make it practical to use. It's going to make it so that you can take this and improve your life and your relationship with it. So, Kinship, we think we can help you with your relationship through our curriculum, which is our aggregation of our thoughts, research, readings, our own lived experience, basically all the information necessary to have at your disposal when it comes to your relationship. And in the future, we're developing an app specifically for couples that's going to help with your day-to-day mental health and emotional upkeep. And that's where we're starting. Day one. We have an email landing page ready to go with a free guide download. Head over there if this sounds at all interesting to you. Get the conversation started. I'll put a link in the description below, and we'll go from there. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for next time.